My name is Terrence Gray, and I'm the founder and executive director of the New York Television Festival. Just to let you guys know, the TV Festival is this October. It's from October 22nd to the 27th. And what we do is we're a lot like a film festival, but we're for television and digital. And so we offer writers, directors, producers the opportunity to independently finance a TV pilot or a script or what have you. And the best of the best make it into the festival. And over the last couple of years, what we've been able to do is we have partnerships with people like Fox or Comedy Central or Lifetime and A&E to Hasbro Studios, really all of the networks and studios across television. And what's really cool is they'll guarantee deals so that the best pilots are going to get into business, whether it's MTV or Sci-Fi or Fox. As we said, and we've really built it over the last 8 years, and the idea is to really get producers, directors, writers, agents, to get them into the room. We set up one-on-one meetings with all these different networks and studios, and we'd love to have you guys check it out. It's nytvf.com. We do a lot of great events at night, premieres and fun events, but our primary focus is development. So enough about that. I'm proud to share the stage today with two indie filmmakers who have successfully transitioned their abilities from film into television and back again. First, Daniel Minahan, writer-director of film Series 7, The Contenders, and director of such great shows as Game of Thrones and True Blood. Welcome, Daniel. And Rose Trochet, writer, director, co-executive, of the film Go Fish, and director, co-executive producer, and writers of such great shows as The L Word and 6 Feet Under. Welcome, Rose. And I just wanted to start, guys, maybe you could introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about your credits and your careers, what you've worked on in the past, and what you're currently working on.
Cool. You want to go first?
Yeah, because I just really want to talk to Dan about Game of Thrones, so I'm sure that's what we're all here for. So that stuff's true, and I guess we'll get into more of why we did.
Yeah,
what we did, why we transitioned when we did, or whatever.
Yeah, I think maybe the start, how you got started, and where you found success, and.
So I did 3 features before I went into television, Go Fish, Bedrooms and Hallways, and The Safety of Objects. And when I got done with The Safety of Objects, I thought to myself, and that sort of happened over the course of 10 years that I made those 3 films, and I really was just like, it was very funny because when I did Go Fish, I was like, I can do everything, and I sold it at Sundance, and and kind of was a little full of myself. And then sort of by my 3rd feature, I sort of realized like I've only directed this much content, and I really wanted to work on like I think you have to work on the craft of directing. It's like I suppose some people are naturals, but there's a lot to learn, and that's it, and especially now, like there's a tremendous learning curve. So I just wanted to keep on working, but working a little more, like on things that didn't take 3 years to get up, like write, do, and so I wanted to do something quality, and so I said to my agent, like I would like to work more. So but I want to do like hour-long and not do like network. But not that that's bad. I don't think Dan has either done like sitcom or half-hour format. Have you?
No.
No. I mean, I would have loved to have done a 30 Rock, but there's only 6 episodes left. But so I got 6 Feet Under was the first thing that I did, and that was wonderful. And that was, I mean, it just opens up your world. And I'm sure that Dan can speak a lot more to like just the beauty of working on something at HBO, because you're just like, how many cameras? And like sometimes you never had 3 cameras to work with, so you'd have no idea, like you're just like, I can start with this one, move that one. I mean, so it did what it was supposed to do. And then after that, I got offered the pilot for The L Word, and then it got into that for, and then did another pilot for South of Nowhere, and that show got picked up as well. And then now I just am sort of trying to segue back to do some film, because Why? Someone say why. Why? Because very shortly before I start to monopolize this, because there is something about television. There is a parameter around television that can sometimes start to become restrictive to your own self creatively, I think. And you start to be like, oh my God, I need that coverage. I just wrapped on a short like 2 nights ago, and I was just like, oh, I don't have to see their face talking the whole time. Like, oh my God, unlearn it. Like, unlearn the language of like television. You know what I mean? Because you're like, you have to communicate it, and and you don't want to get fired. You don't want to like not do the show again. But again, like I think that Dan speak now. But that's like kind of the short answer for that. I kind of want to get into a different language, and then I also want my own show. So that's at the same time I'm trying to have my own show. So. Yeah.
I guess my career path went from, I actually started off as a documentary filmmaker, and out of school I started working as a journalist, and I worked in television, producing things for the BBC and PBS and MTV, sort of like segments, and in particular I sort of did cultural and arts things. And then I kind of segued into, I'd gone to film school, I kind of segued in, I found that very interesting. I sort of segued into screenwriting and directing of narrative stuff. And the first thing that I worked on was with a colleague, Mary Herron, who directed I Shot Andy Warhol. We co-wrote the script together, which started off as a documentary for the BBC. There was very little film footage of Valerie Solanas, the subject, and so turned it into a narrative. From there, I wrote Series 7, which was sort of like a homage to my fascination with cops and reality TV. And it seemed like an easy way to segue into a narrative. Series 7 imagined a TV show that was like a gladiator sport of killing. And I sort of sent up all the tropes of reality TV. And then just by coincidence, Alan Ball and Ellen Poole, who Rose knows from 6 Feet Under, saw the film and hired me, or they interviewed me and asked me to direct an episode of 6 Feet Under and established a rapport with them. And as it turned out, the film was sort of a cult film in the writer's room there. And from there, I kind of continued to work for HBO, all along developing film projects, which have sort of like one by one sort of fallen away. But I found the television work very gratifying and very fulfilling. So I continued to work for HBO, and I've done a couple of, I worked on 6 Feet Under, I worked on Deadwood, and Big Love, and now more recently True Blood and Game of Thrones. But along the way I sort of did dip my toes into network television. Rose and I had been talking, and there was a certain point where I said I won't do any more episodic stuff until I do a pilot. And I sort of committed myself to getting a pilot, which I literally thought was going to kill me. It was like one of the most difficult things that I did. You can attest to that. It's crazy, like doing a network pilot. You were lucky you did it for cable.
Both of my pilots were cable. I mean, one MTV, well, the N network, and then the other.
Yeah, it was a little bit of trial by fire. It was a CBS pilot. They held on to everyone for a whole year. It was with Michael Seitzman, the writer of North Country, Mark Gordon, who legendary film producer and television producer, did everything from Speed to 2012 to Grey's Anatomy in television. And then later went on, I did a second pilot for ABC, which was picked up, which was called, I can't remember the name of it. The New York Times described it as, I described it as Doctors with Borders. New York Times described it as Doctors Without Shirts. And,
it was a Grey's Anatomy spin-off, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was. It imagined all these sort of interns in South America,
Yes.
which actually was picked up. It was called Off the Map.
And it was on for like.
And it was off the air.
Episodes. Yeah. They must have put their shirts on or something.
But interestingly, now that I'm kind of circling back, I'm working with Alan Ball on a feature. He's written a feature and asked me to direct it, and he's producing it. I'm kind of, making my way back into features. But interestingly, all my friends who are indie directors are coming to me and we practice their pitches and stuff, for TV series. So yeah. And like Rosa, one day I would like to have my own show. I'm going to have some ideas of things.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the goal. I think after you do an episodic long enough, is just to have control of that, and it doesn't mean that you have complete control at all, but it's just a little bit more than when you come in and you're, sort of guest directing.
Right.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, having worked in both mediums, what do you guys think are the differences between the two? Artistically, what is the most challenging? And I guess I would add to that, in terms of, you talked about the difference of a pilot versus a series. And can you talk about the challenges or the advantages to really having it as your show from the pilot, from the inception, as to coming onto somebody else's show to sort of direct an episode or what have you?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think when you do, having a pilot is also, if you can't have your own show, it's great to direct the pilot, because you usually end up as either an executive producer or in a position where you're, if you don't walk away from it, in a position where you control the look. You get, let's be real, the reason why indie filmmakers particularly go to television is because we don't make money on our movies. So it's just if you want, finally to just not live sort of hand to mouth, it's a nice way, you have residuals, and when you do the pilot, you get a bump every time there's an episode, even if you don't direct it. So that's a sweet deal. Let's be real.
As long as it stays on the air.
It's totally true. You're like, syndication. But it doesn't, they don't perpetually happen. There's different deals for that sort of thing. Usually it's the first time it shows, and then, you get this extra bump. But I think that the difference between it's I find sometimes I find going on to a new show starting high school, and it's just you're the new person. They have their whole clique.
The substitute teacher.
Yeah, you're like the substitute teacher. Are they going to like me? Are they not going to like me? I don't know. You either fit in with the group of people, or that's sort of the X factor, and that it's it just adds a level of stress to the thing, and then you have to get it moving.
Yeah.
And in network, Dan should talk about that more, because network is a different ballgame, and I did Ugly Betty, and I think that's the only network thing I've done. Oh no, I did Law and Order, which was tremendous amount of fun.
So,
the first time I did a show that I don't really watch, but which I like to do shows that I like, but I just love the experience of it. It was just it was in the 20th season. It just ran like a machine. It was like being in a game of double dutch. You're just jump in and you're and then you just jump out sweating. It was awesome, because they don't care what, they're just you can just there's just such a freedom to it. It's all handheld. It's all I'm just yeah.
all right.
6 scenes, 6 locations, one day. That was one of the days that I had on that show, or it's just anyway.
That's a lot, because in a 12-hour day it means that I'm doing the math, you have 2 hours to shoot each scene.
Yeah, and we're moving from one location to the next. It wasn't in one building. It was 6 different locations. But anyways.
And Dan, can you talk maybe about some of the challenges and rewards of doing that at a broadcast network and going into a project at the pilot stage?
Well, the interesting thing about broadcast is, a broadcast network like CBS, is that the casting process is really elaborate. You see hundreds and hundreds of people. Everything's done by consensus. You'll approve someone, and then it goes through everyone up to Les Moonves. There's this horrible process where you actually have to bring your actors, your 2 or 3 actors who you love, like children, and they stand on a stage like this with the lights in their eyes in a darkened room, and you're not allowed to talk to the executives or influence them in any way, and they audition like this for an intimate scene. It's crazy. It's very challenging. It's very interesting. But when it works, it works great. I also think that doing things by consensus is also why network stuff tends to be kind of middle of the road.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know. The casting process at HBO is very different. It's you work very closely with the creator and the producers. You audition people, you find them. On 6 Feet Under, you remember everyone auditioned.
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe Kathy Bates didn't audition.
Right,
But,
when they would bring in someone special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really wanted to make sure it was the right person,
Yeah.
you know, for
Right.
the role, and that they were willing to work.
Right.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, when you're doing a pilot, you are responsible for building it from the ground up, hiring all the creative personnel, your DP. Eventually they need to be vetted and approved by the producers, but you know, which I think you probably would on an indie film too. I mean, they're not going to hire someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
You know, but you're kind of building it from the ground up. You get to set the tone. You get to set the look of it.
It's the closest you get to making a film that's not a film, you know, because you're doing all the casting. Again, they have to be approved, but that the networking sounds crazy. God,
Yeah,
it's like
it's extreme.
I've only done it, you know, on the cable side, that. Yes, I think I maybe had a mini stroke right there.
Well, the actors go into this audition in front of the network, having just like you see them before, and they're signing, you know, these contracts like this big, because if they're approved, then they're signing away their, you know,
Every right to their
exclusivity for the
image.
next
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because they
it's
can't
crazy.
do anything else. But yeah, it is, the pilot is also, I mean, like, what you were saying, like, you know, I'm gonna do a pilot, because it really is, like, it's like having creative control, a lot of creative control, but you have the budget in place. So you have this infrastructure in which you're like, so there's not that thing of like, oh my God, we just lost $100,000 and now we have to, you know, wrap or cut someone or do something, you know, that is all taken away, and in some kind of way, you're completely free within all of these other restraints to do this thing. Like when I did the pilot for the L Word, it's like I really felt like, you know, I mean, the casting process was long. There was a lot of convincing. There was a lot of like, okay, if this person, if you give me this, then you can have that, you know, like, and, you know, like, you know, and we had that whole thing of like, you don't understand, but our audience will. So we had, you know, on the L Word, because we're just like, they will appeal, believe me, you know, like, you know, and then doing South of Nowhere was like, you know, was just so extraordinarily casual. I mean, casting for that.
Casting's a big part of it. I mean, these are people that you're going to have to, you're entrusting your vision to, but you're also possibly, I mean, if you end up being the producing director on that show, you could work with them for the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. You know, so they had better be people who are reliable, people who are right for the role, who you have a rapport with.
And it changes the longer a show is on. And, you know, depending on if you have like a sole star or multiple people, I mean, it's really it's an interesting, I find that journey interesting and fulfilling in a way. Like when you get to like, you're going back to Game of Thrones and like, you know, you've worked with these people already, you start to know actors better. When you do a film, you're with them for such a small amount of time, and it's just so fraught. It's always like so much like, you know, you have to get your directing and all of your stuff in sort of like prior, because like you're so dragged 100 different ways on set, you know. But when you work with someone and you're on a show, on a television show, you spend so much more time with them. You get to know sort of their quirks, or when they're being too tired, or when they're, oh, you're falling back on that thing you always do, like. You can cry easily. Great, don't do it. Like, you know, like, or, you know, like, I don't know, you know, like things that you know that they're doing as like their go-to, and that's not the kind of thing that you get as a director often with, you know. I imagine that theater's like that. You get to know someone, you know, a little bit longer. It's why I've always kind of wanted to do that.
I think it's more like the model of theater. That's a good point, which is that the writer's word is the word. You know, it's like you stick to the writer's word. I mean, there are shows like. On Girls, where stuff is, you know, you're allowed to go off and expand. It's just, you know, or Larry David Show, where it's, you know, you get a story and then you improvise it. But otherwise, it's still like the writer's word. And I think in that respect, and the writer's present with you on set. Some people like that, some people don't like it. I particularly like it because I enjoy working with writers, but it's also like having an extra brain on set and keeping it on the tone on track. And because you are pulled in a you know, you're answering questions from 500 different people and trying to keep it all going, it's nice to have that person there and their support.
And on Game of Thrones, it's probably actually 500 different people.
And so, just sort of going on that, as filmmakers, you guys have been on projects, or your projects, where you're the creators, the writers, and the directors. And can you compare that to television, where often you're acting as a producer or a director, but perhaps the story is coming from a different writer? And working in that context, is that, do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy working with a writer, and what is that like as compared to doing your own work in terms of the written work?
I think you need to be adaptable. I mean, I think the thing that Rose is talking about, about learning an actor or an actress and what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. I think it's the same with writers. You need to be adaptable. And part of, I feel like, what my job is to realize what they have on the page. Sometimes you can surprise them with something that they hadn't anticipated. Oftentimes I find writers will write something and there's something there, but they've sort of unconsciously done it.
Yeah.
And it's fun to kind of just mind that and pull that out in a surprising way. But I think,
And for the most part, are those good working relationships? Are the times when it's not adversarial, but there are creative sort of arguments as to how you're interpreting something?
I think I only had one throwdown with a writer who kept saying, "Make her stop pulling her earring." When she says that, "Make her stop pulling her earring." I was just like, that's way too specific.
Yeah.
She's an actress, not a
Right.
puppet.
A meat
Right.
puppet. Yeah.
There's a part of the thing too, I don't know, you must have experienced this, is that you're sometimes negotiating, there are often rifts that come between, after several seasons of a show, between writers and actors. That there's kind of a, the actors are like, "Well, I would never say that." And the writer's like, "Well, actually,
Yes.
I created your character, and you would say that."
Yes.
Or, that's sort of like
Yes.
the gist of it. And you have to negotiate that and make everybody happy.
Yes.
Sometimes
They want to start doing something different.
Yeah.
Because they're this character, and now you're in your 5th season, and you're this character. And they're like,
Making the
I
same
want to be a different
mistakes.
character.
Yeah.
Just like, and like, why can't I be? And just because, you're trying to create a line from the beginning of your journey to this point in time. And, and I think it's just that they grow restless sometimes with a character and want their character to have more. Like in an ensemble piece, it's just like, why am I not doing anything for
Right.
this episode? Why am I so there's a lot, there's a lot of that stuff. So yes, I think with writers, I think the one thing that I find that I think, my only thing that bothers me, because I write myself, is when a writer is so like, not a word can be changed. We write these scripts, when we write shows, we write these scripts in like kind of a truncated period of time, and mistakes are made, or like things, and I feel like there should be like possibly sometimes a little more flexibility. So it's nice when you work with a writer who says, yeah, you know what, that might be a little better, or but I've had writers who are like, not a word, like, can you, like, from can we go now, or I want to leave, like, it's like it wouldn't, I don't know, but it is what it is, and like Dan said earlier, the writer is, the way that television works is like, the writer's trumps the director, definitely, and that's something you have to know in television, because don't make those waves.
So when you guys talked in the beginning about wanting to have your own show, would that be from the standpoint of both writing and directing, or could you see sort of a marriage and having your own show with a writer that you really want to work with?
I want to write
How
and
would you-
direct.
Just
Well,
gonna do it all.
I want to write and direct, but I don't. It's too much work, and I think sometimes you overextend yourself. So it's like, do the last episode or do the first,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once you pull yourself into directing a show, you're really pulling yourself out of overseeing the show, because you can't be like two different people. So it's got to either be towards the end of the season, when like everything's kind of done, and you're like, okay, that last script is ready, that one's ready, this one's ready. Okay, I'm going to jump in and direct now. But I think that, so I don't have any aspirations. I mean, I would like to do the pilot of my own show.
Yeah.
But the pilot, usually, there's a lead time between, you get the pilot done in sort of an island, and then the show gets picked up and you go on. So, you know, I would like to do like, you know, that, so I don't have any, like, I don't want to get in there and direct all my, I mean, I think of Louis C.K. and I'm like, you know, you're editing too?
Right.
Yikes. Like, you know, when do you're writing, directing, editing,
Yeah.
acting in. It's just, you know, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because that must be your entire life.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard, it is hard to have a life when you're in the middle of a season too, you know, I mean, he's going to Croatia, like right now, to wait for the snow.
Iceland.
Iceland to wait for the snow, you know.
And I would follow up on that, Rose, and say, you know, when you're working in television, obviously, as you said, it's a truncated, it's a shorter period of time. And does that faster pace, does that affect your work and your choices?
Certainly, yeah. I think, you know, it's interesting because just like Rose was saying, you know, people have this sort of go-to, you know, certain actors or actresses will have this certain go-to thing. I always have to kind of keep myself in check because you'll be faced with a very tight schedule and you have to shoot this scene. And I have, you know, as a director, I have certain go-to things, ways of blocking things, ways of setting things. And so the challenge is finding ways of keeping it fresh and really serving, you know, it's always like if it's serving the story, great. But I think you have to be, again, you have to be adaptable, think on your feet, and be good in crisis situations.
Okay. Daniel, talking about Game of Thrones, given the scope of the series, you know, can you talk about that as opposed to, and maybe give us a little insight about some of the cool things around the production of that show, as opposed to some of the other series or films that you've done?
Just tell us what's happening in Winterland. It's really what I want to know.
It's certainly much larger. When I went to work on it in season 1, I was sort of shocked at I walked into this set that was the size of a football field. It was the throne room, and I had like 2 scenes in there, and I thought, oh my God, I didn't even, like, there was nothing. There's just these huge columns
You're like,
and all this space. And I thought, like, if I call a taxi now and I get to the airport, by the time they realize.
I would have been like, I gotta get out of here.
And then we just, you know, my cinematographer arrived, and we just kind of, you know, we decided, like, okay, there's nothing in this room, so we'll use the people to make the shape of it, you know, and you just go from there. You just chip away at it.
Yeah.
In season 1, I cross-boarded 3 episodes, which means that you shoot 3 at one time, and I will never do that again.
I nearly had a heart attack for you just now. It was just like, oh, on a show that big.
And then I didn't work for about 4 months after. I was just so fried.
Recovering like,
yeah.
like a little fried egg.
But it's you know, it's just like anything else. It's much larger. There are many more background people. There's huge stunts and small stunts and gags and blood and gore, you know, in almost every scene. And you just kind of try to plan it accordingly. I think the most challenging thing, like every season there's like a new terror. I didn't work on season 2, but I'm back for season 3 now. My big terror now is that Iceland, I just scouted Iceland, where it's just, you know, lava and blobs for as far as the eye. I'm like, okay, I guess this location's good. We'll see what it looks like in December when it's full of snow.
Yeah.
So,
It's literally jaw-dropping to me. Like, I am just like, because I watched
and there's 4 hours of daylight.
and I didn't even, oh my God, and I didn't even realize, yeah, but it takes 4 hours to get 300 extras outside. But, you know, like, to me, that show is like the largest in scope on television. It's like larger than most movies. And even to hear that it's shot in all these different locations, like literally, they're not green screening it, they're not, you know, they're there. That is like, that's just, it's just like, I don't even know how I would handle that. Like, I mean, it's thrilling, and then it must be the most, like, you must just, like, I probably would, like, vibrate so hard that I couldn't even touch the bed,
Yeah.
you know, like from fear and anticipation of the next day, you know, and then just like.
That's what Ambient's for.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, because you know, I know I do. It doesn't matter what I do. I still get extraordinarily, you know, nervous and tense, you know, like about, and I'm like, I always have the nightmare that I'm not there, and someone else is directing. I walk in and someone's directing better. You know? So it's just like, you know, I can't do a show without like feeling like, you know.
Well, but the great thing about that show is it's run very efficiently.
Yeah.
The creators of this show, David Benioff and Dan Weiss, are incredible and collaborative, and really more than, no, actually, no, it's not true. I was going to say more than any show, they really, you know, sort of encourage you to take chances in your vision. I found that Alan Ball has a really great way of doing that too. He really lets people go.
Yeah.
And then just kind of really, you know, gently kind of pulls it in a little bit where it needs to be, or yeah, I don't think they need to be naked in that scene, or,
Right.
you know, like very
But not in this year's season
gingerly.
finale. It was really pulled in.
It was.
Well, because everyone's slashed and dying.
Oh.
Sorry for everyone who didn't see it.
I haven't seen it yet, thanks.
Yeah, it was a gory season under. Anyway, oh, and I also wanted just to say, because when I said that I wanted to write and direct my own stuff, I'm actually working with a couple of collaborators. So I have no thing about having to solely write something and hold on to it.
Right.
You know, like almost everything that I've done, I've been working with someone else
Right.
on the ideas.
And it almost sounds like to hold on to that for a season can be detrimental because of the scope of the work that goes into all of it. Meaning acting as a producer, writer, director on a series over
yeah.
time will just,
Yeah, I think you have to have, I think in television you really have to have good collaborators.
right.
You know, people who are just like really, you know, you have to create your team. You have to
Yeah.
create a strong team.
Yeah.
You
Because
know?
you're not creating something that sustains for 90 minutes, it sustains for 12 hours.
Right,
Right.
and then
So-
over the
Right.
course of time, you know, so I think it's really important to share, if you, like in creating a show with someone, to have someone that you really trust, and have someone who, especially if you're gonna be a writer, you know, you're gonna run your writer's room with this person, that they kind of, they're like the keepers of certain characters, and you're the keepers of certain characters, you know, so that your voice, so that not everybody sounds like you. You know how when you watch a show and you're like, oh, everyone kind of sounds like the same? That's because like one person is writing. You know, you really from the very beginning create distinctive voices.
Talk to us about the writer's room.
Talk to us.
Yeah.
About the writer's room?
Yeah, like on
Oh.
Outward.
The writer's room, well, the way we did the writer's room in Elwood is it's a little bit, you know, I think was sort of a loose kind of situation. And we had sort of some core people who stayed the whole time. Well, no one stayed. No one did all 6 seasons except for Eileen. But that was, you know, I mean, you just get together and like, you know, what are we going to do? You know, you just put boards up on the wall. And what do we want to have happen this season? And Eileen and I would usually meet before the season began to discuss like what do we want to do this season in sort of really big broad strokes. And then when we get to LA and get to the writer's room, you know, like, which is, it's always nice to have a really comfy writer's room and a lot of really good snacks because you really eat a lot when you're writing. It's really important to have, you know, like frozen yogurt and thing. I don't know. We would always send. That's all our PAs did. Would go out and like get us more snacks, you know. But yeah, it is a, you know, you. I think that with some people we'd be like, we need this voice on staff this year. We're going to introduce this character, and we need someone to really speak to that voice. And I've been talking to someone about getting together to create a series, and we know that we need like a person, you know, like she was so funny because she wrote me back. She goes, I think we need someone younger than us. Like, you know, I hope that doesn't offend you. I'm like, no, I can't write like, you know, like I don't know what it's like to be, you know, 20 and sexually active right now. You know, and so we need to find that person. But I think that we can get to the point where we try to sell it without finding that person. You know, like, but then we'll put that person on staff. So that's, you know, like, what are your needs? And I think it's good to staff up based on the needs of the characters that you've created, and to really create characters. I think characters need an entire. They shouldn't just appear like out of nowhere. They should have an entire history, so that actor knows when they're telling you, I wouldn't say that line. They have something at least to fall back on and say, like, you know, this is where my history is.
Yep.
You know, sometimes actors get really frustrated, like, I thought I had a brother. Now I don't. And then you have to come up with elaborate ways of going like, Well, you did, yeah, the thing about that is that you grew up in an orphanage.
Yeah.
And you didn't know that you had, so you have to backpedal if you don't, and it's embarrassing, you have to really be, I really look forward to the moment when I have my own show, because it's like, I really want to run something which is like, where, like, multi-layered, like, what happened to this person when, and, like, really create very deep characters.
Yeah. I'd like to open it up. We have a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions. Yes?
Should I go to the mic or stay here?
I think we can hear you.
All right, good. I was just wondering about, like, it sounds weird, but, like, the quality of you guys' lives, like, in terms of, do you have to be a workaholic to be, like, successful in this industry? Do you find that you have to not have a life, in the words of Howard Stern?
I literally had just asked him that in the back, and
I'm just interested, as somebody who's kind of, maybe at a crossroads, could try to, go in the entertainment industry, could do something else, it's just good to get that feedback from successful people like yourselves. So.
Well, I mean, Dan is like, he's here for like a day or 2 days. I was even trying to have coffee with him. And it's like, oh, I can't. Or our friend Jeremy Podeswa, who just does, he's doing like, like Boardwalk Empire is killing him. But he works for, he's another HBO director. And I know he's got the house, but he's like, he's never anywhere.
If you want to have a relationship, you have to have a strong relationship that can survive long distance.
There's a really high divorce rate, like, in the business. When I was doing the L Word, I live in New York, and I would live in New York less of the year than I would live in LA and in Vancouver. I was paying taxes in, like, 2 countries and 3 different, in 2 different states. It's just, and so, like, and that was all right for me because of where I was, and for a time in that, I was actually working with my partner, which is ideal. It's almost like, that's why, but I mean, you're we didn't talk about sidebar.
Yeah.
Yes, so long-term relationship, but like,
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
There you go.
Yeah. But it takes a lot of it takes a lot of time and a huge commitment. I mean, it's your child, I also have very successful friends who have kids.
Yeah, I'm working. We're like Stacy. We just did a movie together, and she's got kids, and I'm like, and you want a show, and I'm just like, think about like the fact that you had to go home last night and be like, there's a new sheriff in town. It's Mom. She's been gone for a long time, but that was just like, but she's back now, and you better listen to me. Like it's like you have to reinstate your authority because you've just been gone. And then we did a feature, and then we did my short, like literally one after the other, and I'm just like, your kids don't know who you are anymore because you're here all night, they're.
It's the life of a gypsy.
Yeah, so it is hard.
Yeah, the microphone.
Hi. Hi, I'm Jeannie Corcoran. I'm the film commissioner for Sarasota County, Florida. First, I want to give a shout out to Alan Ball and Nancy Oliver from Sarasota, where they graduated from FSU's Conservatory of Motion Pictures Television, my alma mater in there. So tell Alan Ball Sarasota said hi, and he needs to bring his movie to Sarasota, where we'll give him 100% cash back. Tell him I'm serious. We have a really
Just
unusual
for
all the.
That's quite an
For all the
incentive.
indie filmmakers, and for big projects as well as small, we're the only place in Florida that, in addition to the state tax credits, we give up to 100% cash back for what you spend on qualified spending in Sarasota County, and 20% on everything else that doesn't get 100%. So it's pretty interesting. But that wasn't what I came up for. That is a commercial portion of our program.
There are people online right now buying tickets.
Yes.
Sarasota.
I have postcards. I'll give out postcards about the 100% cashback. But I have a 2-part question. The first part, also in Sarasota County, because we're kind of innovative and wacky, we have a program called TV Me, and we created it from scratch. Nobody else does it. It's a pitch contest for new content in television. New ideas, 15 pages or less in a pitch. And we have a grand prize winner every year. We take that person out to LA for meetings, and they meet with network and so on. And we get pitches in made-for-television movies. We get pitches based on books they want to make into a TV series. We get a wide array. And when we first started it, people said, this is stupid, no one wants to talk to a contest winner. And I'm finding, and I want your opinion on this, because I'm finding it's just the opposite. All these people that have been vetted through a competition, multi-layer judging and so forth, when I take them out to LA, I'm meeting with executives from CBS and NBC and ABC and USA Networks and Sci-Fi Channel, and they're eager to see these new ideas that have been vetted through a competition process. So that's the first part of a two-part question. What's your opinion on that?
I think it's great. I mean, as I said in the beginning, we run the New York Television Festival, which
And I'll
is
be there. I will be there.
yeah, which is competition based. But at this point in our 8th year, we have 25 guaranteed deals with different networks and studios. So I think the idea that they can see new voices that aren't coming through the same agencies, the same people that are going through. I think people are, you know, as long as you have good curators, and I'm sure you do, that they'd welcome that, and I think that's a great program. And I'm sure you know you really want these guys' comments, but yeah, I think it's terrific.
I want these guys to be judges, but I know they're too busy. One of the things we're doing in New York while I'm here is the grand prize winner from this year, from the 2012 contest, we just got them signed with an agent last night, and it'll be pitched to Los Angeles as a bi-coastal thing for New York and LA. The second part of my question was kind of related to that incentives thing. Television, I don't feel, goes for it the way feature films do and indie films out in the field do. But how does incentivizing, like ours, you know, 100% cash back, no strings attached for all these different things, how does that affect television programming? We get some TV shows that come out and shoot on location, but not a lot.
Mostly pilots go after incentive places. Like I know a lot of people end up in Austin or different places. I think mostly what they'll do is they'll shoot the pilot,
Right.
decide whether or not they're going to invest in it, and then they'll either shoot it in Los Angeles or another place that can
Yeah,
double
someone
for
doesn't want to leave home.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really about people leaving home. If you're going to have a show and your show takes you, if your show takes you 9 months out of the year, people don't want to, I mean, I remember when they moved Ugly Betty here from LA, literally packed the whole show up, measured the studio, and moved it over. And then all these people had to enroll their kids in school here, find a place here, be away from their home. And that's a big deal. It depends, I think it depends how big the scope of it is. And if you have actors who are if you're gonna have if Meryl Streep is gonna do a show, you're gonna go to her. She's not gonna come to you. Or, so I think that makes a difference too. Then you have something like Game of Thrones where you're just you're all over the world. But that's the cloud of HBO. You're gonna do.
Right. But that's a huge ensemble, and it's
Yeah.
not I mean, mostly we use people from the UK, and they fly into Belfast from London.
Right, but they're still leaving home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, when you mentioned off the map, we had been talking to them because we have 5 barrier islands. And they were, seriously talking to us about our locations and if they could fake South America and so forth. Unfortunately, Florida didn't have mountains, but you could CG that in. But they were interested, I think, primarily because we would throw $25,000 or $30,000 or $50,000 back at them in cash.
Yeah.
So that seemed to help.
Cool.
And Anna Paquin just recently did her film Free Ride, which is an indie film, low budget, did it entirely there. And
Right.
I think the reason they chose us was because of the cash back. So-
I always, when we're trying to look at, especially films, look at places where we can get cash back.
Good.
Always.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah, in the front.
Yeah, I was wondering how TV kind of works. You're saying you're working on the season of Game of Thrones and stuff. Is there a director that oversees the entire season, and then there's directors that work on the episodes?
Well, in season 1 there wasn't. Season 2, there was Alan Taylor who was the directing, sort of, what is it called, a co-exec or
Yeah, it would,
directing.
They would have to be an executive. They're a director who does a lot of episodes, but they have an executive producer or co-EP.
Mostly it meant that he did a lot of episodes and kind of filled in
Yeah.
the gaps and picked up pieces that needed to be picked up.
And he would be the go-to if there were things.
You did that on the L Word.
Yeah, I did that on another.
'Cause I worked
if someone
for-
couldn't
yeah.
come back, or if someone didn't,
But Rose also would.
Dan's the only person who's ever directed an episode that I wrote, but he directed, because I've always
Yeah.
directed my own episodes, but he's the only director to have directed an episode that I wrote.
So we worked together, and when she was running that show, or whatever you want to call it, the supervising director on that. She would meet with people, talk about the tone of things, introduce you to everything, and then also because she was a writer, we also talked in great detail about what each section of it was about.
Like it on 6 Feet Under, it would be, usually you get like, you're brought in, there's a tone meeting, there's like, like he said, there's like Game of Thrones, there has to be someone who's there almost the whole time, but they're gonna get another credit besides a directing credit. Like, you're gonna have either a co-EP credit or an EP credit.
Now they don't have that anymore. I mean, I'm finding that interestingly, television's become more and more of a producer's medium. So a lot of things are set up by the producers, and then you kind of wrestle them to the ground and try to do it your way.
There's like multiple directors, like for every episode, and like the producers kind of like make sure like the season has like continuity in between each episodes and all that.
Yeah, I think also because you're working with, well, actually on Game of Thrones we work with, I think there's 4 or 5 directors. We all have different, for the most part, we have different cinematographers. But they're, like my cinematographer, Jonathan Freeman, who's is sort of like the supervising cinematographer. So he kind of keeps everybody in line and kind of makes sure that no one's veering off dramatically and changing the look of the show.
But don't you, but that has to do with the hugeness of that show. I mean, usually it's the one.
Usually it's one or two cinematographers, and they alternate, and they work closely together.
Yeah.
But because it's the same camera operators and the same crew and the same
keep going.
Sorry. The same camera. Someone just held up a funny sign. The same camera operators and the same crew. Everything tends to, and the same, creative personnel. It tends to have the same look.
Excellent. Well, guys, unfortunately, we are out of time, but let's have a nice hand for Rose and Dan.